in the car. Do you remember that? Yes. Okay. And that's what you're telling us today, is that you recall the man who got the gun went to the rear passenger door or rear passenger area and reached in the car and pulled out a gun. Yes. And do you remember that man being, let me withdraw that and ask this. Do you remember in January you're testifying that that person was a dark-skinned Hispanic? That I don't remember. You were just read some prior testimony and beginning at page 54, line 23. You were asked if you recall this. Yes. Okay? One last time starts with question by attorney on the right. Okay? So you don't recall testifying the other way, that the person who made the statements about the speakers and so on came from the liquor store? You don't recall that? I don't remember. Maybe the interpreter, or I made a mistake through the interpreter. Then you were asked the question here on page 43, line 14. The question was, so then what happened? And your answer was, so then they got mad and started screaming and yelling. And the question to you by the attorney was, who got mad, the driver and the guy who came out of the liquor store? And you answered the guy who came out of the store got mad. Do you recall saying that at preliminary hearing back in January of 1998? No, I don't remember. That's not how it happened, right? No. This is page 44, line number 2. Then you were asked a question by the attorney in the case, and he asked you, so what happened next? And you answered, so this guy who came out of the store, when they started yelling and everything, he went to the back seat of the car. And you were asked the question, all right, and you answered, and bring out a gun. And the question was, okay, when he brought the gun out, were you still at the trunk? And you answered, yeah, we were still in the back of the trunk. Do you recall saying that at the preliminary that then the person from the liquor store went to the trunk or the back of the car and got the gun? Do you recall saying that? No. Again, from line 8, page 44, and then the question was to you, okay, and when he brought the gun out, were you still at the trunk? And you said, yeah, we were still at the back of the trunk. And the question was, then what happened? And then you answered, then he told him, he asked him again if he was going to buy the speakers. And Fernando said, how am I going to buy? I don't have any money. So he got mad and started shooting, shot Fernando. I'm assuming you're referring to the person that came from the liquor store. Do you recall that, sir? No. Now, going to page 52 of the transcript, line number 11, starting with the question. Now, that same day in your preliminary hearing testimony, you were asked questions by another attorney to clarify some of the things you were saying. Do you recall that the two attorneys asked you questions? No, I don't remember. From line 11, you were asked a question. Okay, someone went and retrieved a gun out of the red Caprice. Is that correct? And you answered yes. And the next question was, which person was that? And you answered, the one that came out of the liquor store. And your question, not my client though, is that right? Referring to the defendant. And you said, not him. Do you recall saying that in January of this year? I don't remember. This is going to page 53, line 14, with a question in the transcript. That same attorney asked you more questions about the person who shot the gun. And he asked you, question from line 14, okay, and the person who retrieved the gun, do you recall what he looked like? And you answered no. And the question was not at all, and you answered not at all. And you said, and the question was, I'm sorry, go ahead. And you answered, I don't remember how he was. This one has a lot of colloquy, a lot of exchange. And we're starting off with question by attorney on the right. Okay, ready? He's the questioning attorney. Now, when you left court that January this year, did Fernando correct himself and say that the person he saw in court was the shooter and he felt sorry for him? Did he tell you that? Fernando did say something like that. Did you correct him? No. Why not? I was not in agreement to what he said. Thank you, sir. Nothing else. Nothing further. All right. May this witness be excused? Yes. Yes. All right. You may step down. He's excused. That is the last witness for the prosecution side, Your Honor, with the exception of moving in People's Exhibits numbers 1 through 17 into evidence. The people rest their case. Okay, let's just take a second, Mr. Miller, and see what we have. Any comments, Mr. Miller? 1 through 17? 14 and 15, hearsay. That would be my only objection, and I submit it. All right, with that objection noted, the court will admit Exhibits 1 through 17. And you people will have those exhibits to refer to in the jury room. As to 14 and 15, I think there was enough foundational information, and I think it would be helpful to the jury. All right, with that, the people have rested their case. Mr. Miller. Thank you, Your Honor. We would waive opening statement and just call Mr. Manuel Barbosa. Okay. Please come forward and stand right behind the reporter over there, and then raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Please have a seat on the witness stand. Please state your name for the record and spell your name, please. Manuel Barbosa, B-A-R-B-O-Z-A. Mr. Miller, thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Barbosa. Good morning. Okay, try it one more time. Time. Question by attorney on the right. Ready? Now, when you left court that January this year, did Fernando correct himself and say that the person he saw in court was the shooter and he felt sorry for him? Did he tell you that? Fernando did say something like that. Did you correct him? No. Why not? I was not in agreement to what he had said. Thank you, sir. Nothing else. Nothing further. All right. May this witness be excused? Yes. Yes. All right. You may step down. he's excused. That is the last witness for the prosecution side, Your Honor, with the exception of moving in People's Exhibits numbers 1 through 17 into evidence. The people rest their case. Okay, let's just take a second, Mr. Miller, and see what we have. Any comments, Mr. Miller? 1 through 17, 14, and 15, hearsay. That would be my only objection, and I submit it. All right, with that objection noted, the court will admit Exhibits 1 through 17. And you people will have those exhibits to refer to in the jury room. As to 14 and 15, I think there was enough foundational information, and I think it would be helpful to the jury. All right, with that, the people have rested their case. Mr. Miller. Thank you, Your Honor. We would waive opening statement and call Mr. Manuel Barbosa. Okay. I'm going to videotape this. Okay, here we go. These second try bills rarely receive much, if any, notice in the press, and they receive much less than the amount of attention devoted to the head-on confrontations that accompany veto overrides. Nevertheless, these bills are very important for the contributions they will make to the economy and for the evidence that they provide of the unwillingness of the Congress to accept the economic policies of this conservative president. While conflicts over economic philosophy have dominated the events in the Congress so far, they by no means represent the only area of controversy between Congressional Democrats and their Republican counterparts. Protection of consumers and workers and the preservation of our environment and the clarification of social issues have provided ample evidence of the basic differences in philosophy of the two parties. For example, the administration has requested rescissions of hundreds of millions of dollars in funds appropriated by Congress to protect the health and welfare of the millions of poor families in our nation. In March, the House voted on the President's request not to spend $259 million under legislation administered by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. This was money that would have aided one of the more needy and dependent segments of our population. Almost half of this money was for educational aid for Americans with disabilities. The Republicans in Congress voted to follow the President's advice and deny any special assistance or opportunity to the disabled children of America. By voting overwhelmingly to preserve these funds, however, Democrats staved off this Republican attack on those who need extra help in order to learn to help themselves. These second